Sure, maybe two of them. I mentioned the red shirts and the blue shirts, right? So
Right.
if the audience looks around in their respective companies, I'm sure that they will be able to identify the red shirts and the blue shirts, the guys running the day-to-day business and the guys who want to create the new. I mean, the point is, every one of these two parties is right in their own system, right? The ones who run the day-to-day business, who create the margins that you need to keep the shareholders happy, to finance the innovation activities, and the ones, the blue shirts, who say, well, it doesn't last forever. We need to build new business in time, but none of them is exclusively right.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Engatica interview series. I'm your host Anshdeep Kaur, and we're really glad to have you join us today. Today we have Frank Maris, expert in corporate business building, advisor, author, and a thought leader. Welcome, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So before we move ahead, let me brief you a bit about Engatica interview series. So this series is a powerhouse of insights from industry experts and influencers from around the world, a platform that provides latest news on AI, automation, and technologies that will help you grow your business. Come be a part of our community, learn, share, and grow with us. So, Frank, I have a couple of questions for you. What are some common challenges that corporates face when trying to create new businesses from innovation, and how do you help them to overcome these challenges?
I would say in a nutshell, the biggest problem is how do you balance the now, the business that you're running now, that you have your organization, your processes and all that in place. How do you balance this with the new that you're creating to build? And if we think about AI-powered businesses, for instance, they might be even disrupt your existing business, right? So how do I help companies? Companies that I work with are typically north of some 500 million of revenues, right? So the big boys up to the Fortune 10, etc. And in these companies, you find two different kind of people, I would say. The ones who are 98% or so of staff running the day-to-day business, right? They're competing with the usual suspects for the same customers using known channels with comparable products, etc. People call this a red ocean, right? Where there's a fierce battle going on. And I call them the red shirts, the 98%. So today's the core business. But they're also the blue shirts out there, the people looking for the blue oceans, right? And they work in the innovation centers, in the innovation labs, the incubators, accelerators. There's a lot of stuff out there. And it turns out these two value creation system, the red system and the blue system, they are not compatible. And that's the reason why so many attempts to build new businesses fail. And I recognized this problem some 5 years ago and co-created with some 20 companies and two business schools a gearbox, if you will, between the red shirt system and the blue shirt system. And I help companies to orchestrate how they can leverage the corporate assets like a client base, a technology base, processes, brand name, you name it, for an unfair advantage in the market. And I'm also helping companies, the corporate startups, to be more precise, how to move smartly, intelligently in new territory, but still in a corporate context.
So, in your opinion, what are the key characteristics of a successful corporate setup?
On the one side, I think it's pretty obvious. You want that corporate startup to build a sizable new business and obviously a profitable business down the road. But I think there's three more points to that. It's not just a financial play. It's not like you and I get together and think about a startup, a new pizza delivery service, and off we go, right? We are in a corporate context, so we need to have that corporate transformation in mind. So I would say building a platform for future innovations is one big thing. Think about Apple. I mean, everybody knows Apple. They created the iPod. Then came the iTunes store where people bought music and 70% of the revenues went into Apple's pocket. Then they found that the I part was being substituted and disrupted by those upcoming phones, and they created the iPhone, which led to the App Store. You see, there's a whole new trajectory of growth coming down the line. And also, I mean, one point is you want to work the best people for you, but in many cases, the best people, in particular the younger generation, says, well, I don't want to get on the payroll of a 100-year-old company, right? I want to be where the fun is, the AI stuff, right? Making a dent in the universe. So it's also about winning and retaining top talent, I would say.
So how do you measure the success of a corporate startup, and what metrics do you typically use?
Oh, okay. So in order to answer that question, I should say that we look at the end-to-end innovation journey, which starts with an idea and ends with a scaled-up business. So before you really make it big, before you invest big money and throw a lot of people for scaling up, you are in a phase that I call pre-scaling. And what I typically do, and that rings a lot of bells with many clients, is to say we first have to look if the idea that we are pursuing is worthy to be scaled. And once we've collected the proof points, is it ready to be scaled? And the way we work there is kind of a scorecard. So it's not a linear metric. But you look at various tracks, like on the customer side, on the product side, on the corporate side, on the capability side. Are we worthy and ready to be scaled? Where do we need to take leaps of faith? Then there comes a phase where also many companies are still learning how to design that transitional phase between collecting the proof points, the validation, and the scaling. I call it transition to scaling up. And this is where the alignments between the red shirts and the blue shirts takes place. So measuring the alignment, how solid the arrangements are to leverage those corporate assets, the functions, the experts, the customer base for the new is a measure that you use in here. And finally, when you're in scaling up, you grow the business. One of the corporate startups that I worked with ultimately became a 1 billion plus business. And obviously, the more you grow, the more they say classical KPIs like revenue, like margins, etc., kick in. Until they kick in, you probably want to measure, does the scale up meet pre-planned milestones in time and in budget?
Right. So what inspired you to write your 2 books on scaling up corporate startups?
Actually, it's 3 books, right? The third
Oh,
one is
3.
no.
Sorry.
The third one is in the making. You don't know it, right? It's
Oh,
it's right on my desk, right?
okay.
So 5 years ago or so, I noticed that there's a big, hairy, unsolved problem. And in the meantime, we do have some stats, and the stats tell you that 29 out of 30 attempts to build new business fail, right? So there's a lot of ambition and a lot of need for building new businesses because lifetimes are getting shorter, because there's so much challenges outside that need to be solved. So I want to be someone who helps to solve that big, hairy problem of new business building, right? And at the end of the day, see, if you look at the big problems, plastic in the ocean, CO2 in the air, and aging demographics in many parts of this world, right? It's the incumbents who need to come up with industrial solutions, right? It's not just some startup, right? They can do some B2C plays, which is fine and good. No, nothing against that. But solving the big problems of mankind, you need the industrial companies, and helping those industrial companies to create those new businesses that solve these problems. That's my mission.
So are there any other soundbites you'd like to share with our audience?
Sure, maybe 2 of them. I mentioned the red shirts and the blue shirts, right? So
Right.
if the audience looks around in their respective companies, I'm sure that they will be able to identify the red shirts and the blue shirts, the guys running the day-to-day business and the guys who want to create the new. I mean, the point is, every one of these 2 parties is right in their own system, right? The ones who run the day-to-day business, who create the margins that you need to keep the shareholders happy, to finance the innovation activities. and the ones, the blue shirts, who say, well, it doesn't last forever. We need to build new business in time. But none of them is exclusively right. You need to basically tie them together in a gearbox. And I mean, maybe the last point, I hear often that building new businesses, that's risky and that's expensive. True, completely true. But just repeating yesterday's success stories over and over again, over the long run might even be lethal, right? It might kick you out of business.
Right. That's fair. That was really insightful. So thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights with us. For more content, subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to access to exclusive content from thought leaders from around the globe. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you with the new experts soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.